Hey, welcome back to the studio. This is my day of play, where you're taken into the real events and actions of how it really happens long before the process of editing or cleaning up. I mean, this is really how it went. Today, we're broadcasting from the RV deep inside a nature preserve. So you're going to hear a lot of things in the background, and things don't always go right, especially when it comes to my connections with Zoom. First, we're going to be spending some time with actor Josh Rivera from the American sports story, Aaron Hernandez. Then we're going to get real. The importance of becoming a registered voter. All people, no judgment, empowering your voice. And yeah, I do have a conversation where I totally screw up by mispronouncing one word multiple times. And this is the only place you're going to hear this because the power of editing on the other sites, it's all cleaned up now. But my conversation with Carolyn Renee Dupont is as authentic as you'll ever get because, man, I screw up big time. And it doesn't end there. What kind of vert are you? You'll know what I'm talking about after my conversation with Patchett and Fancy Nancy illustrator Robin Preiss Glasser. And then we're going to wrap things up with a true adventure novelist, Corinne Cavanaugh. Her book is called An Audacious Woman. This is how it really went. This is my day of play, completely unedited in the way of meeting the wizard behind the curtain. When your studio is built in an RV and you're overlooking this gorgeous nature preserve, you totally forget that your Bluetooth is hooked up to speakers. And so that's how this particular conversation started off. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. Why wasn't Josh coming through my board? And then I realized what happened and I was able to correct it. Now, I'm going to play you the remix version. And the reason for that is because I want you to hear the entire conversation. I'm still going to play the screw up. Come on, that's what this show is all about. How it really goes. Man, I've got another interview in 8 minutes, and it's like we haven't started on this yet.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, not so bad. Show came out last night. All my friends were calling me and everything. It was cool.
This is Josh, correct?
Yeah.
Josh, I got to tell you something. I am so proud of you doing this American sports story, Aaron Hernandez. And the reason why is because teaming up with Hulu and FX, what's going on here is that we know the headlines. We know what happened after the headlines, but we don't know the story until right now.
Yeah, it's I've been throwing around the term emotional context a lot. It's something that's really cool that provides a bit of a through line for the context of him growing up into going into college and then going into the league and just what that sort of looks like on a young man's mind. And
then I finally figured it out. The Bluetooth was connected up to the speakers. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, not so bad. Show came out last night. All my friends were calling me and everything. It was cool.
Josh, I got to tell you something. I am so proud of you doing this American sports story, Aaron Hernandez. And the reason why is because teaming up with Hulu and FX, what's going on here is that we know the headlines. We know what happened after the headlines, but we don't know the story until right now.
Yeah, it's I've been throwing around the term emotional context a lot. It's something that's really cool that provides a bit of a through line for the context of him growing up into going into college and then going into the league and just what that sort of looks like on a young man's mind and all the factors that kind of go into what ended up happening. It's a cool take on it. I think people are going to like it.
One of the things that you do, and you do it so well, is that you're now him in the eyes of the people that are going to watch this on Hulu and on FX. Do you know what I mean? It's like when we think of Aaron Hernandez now, we're going to think of your image.
Yeah, that's somebody else told me that too. I guess that's like, I'm happy then I got a little bit of facial augmentation, and it is a different look. It's kind of a departure from what I usually look like, which I'm kind of happy about that because it is weird to think that that's going to be associated with me in a really close way now. Yeah. I don't know. That's still kind of dawning on me.
Yeah. Does it feel kind of interesting to be able to get that close to the sport of football and to be a part of a story such as that?
Yeah, it's I had a lot of fun doing the football bits. I don't know if I've been talking about how I played in high school a lot. I used to be really, really into the sport. I ended up leaving it when it started to get really serious. A lot of my peers wanted to play in college, and I just wasn't that serious about it. But it was fun to dust off the chops and to be part of a team again, and to, be really physical with people. I had a really good time with doing that. And it's such a cultural pillar too. Like, people are really, really invested in football as a sport in the United States, but particularly as it pertains to this story. I mean, the amount of like people that were in the Patriots and that kind of dynasty, people who played for the Florida Gators, that championship too. It was a lot of history that I got to learn that I wasn't super familiar with before.
And it's almost like what I feel in watching it is it's you guys are saying, hey, look beyond the sports figure. Look at the child who became the man who became where he is today. It's like you're saying there is a story here. Here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And anybody who is familiar with kind of the news articles and everything that was coming out, there's what you have there at face value, but it doesn't take that much investigating to realize that it is an extremely layered, extremely complex story. When you're talking about his upbringing, and as well as some external factors, not even to mention the CTE, the brain issues going on. I mean, without that, you have these external factors that can be enabling to some negative behaviors. I mean, particularly in the college years. And I think that teaches some really dangerous lessons that kind of mix into this very dangerous cocktail that sort of leads to the conclusion that we all know.
Did you have the opportunity to listen to Aaron's voice? Because, I mean, I'm such a voice person where I want to hear their emotions, their inflection, their pitch, their volume, their tone.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually a big part of my research early on. There was some phone calls that were recorded while he was in prison that were very, very helpful for me because, we all to a certain extent change our disposition and our attitudes depending on the relationship that we have with the person that we're talking to. And that was something that he did to varying degrees, where he would, use different levels of tenderness and swagger depending on if he was talking to friends or family or which friends he was talking to. And that was really useful information to me, just because, we know that there was this double life there and that it was a huge shock to people who were very, very close to him. So that change in temperature, even though it might be really common, it takes on just a little bit more of a sinister tone. So I found that very helpful.
When you talk about that storyline and you're talking about that, those two different lifestyles, oh my God, stepping into that role, that meant you had to experience it by way of acting. And how do you shake that off onto your next scene or in your personal life? Because was it easy to step into two different, sides of your life in a situation like that?
I think it's a really easy thing to romanticize from the outside, but to be honest, I had a lot of help. I had really good directors.
Nice.
I did a lot of prep, and I think it was just important to pay attention to the emotions and what I knew about his history as how it pertained to the scene that we were filming. I'm very much a kind of person that I really kind of leave it all at work. I really don't take anything home with me. I will say that I was exhausted. I mean, it was a very exhausting project. I won't lie. It's quite the commitment. But yeah.
We've all known that pro sports is the great mystery. And one of the things that you do in this story is you kind of take that away. You invite us to look beyond other sports figures, to be able to say they've got a story as well.
Yeah. Something that I find really interesting about athletics as a whole, and this is coming from my perspective as an actor who's now kind of navigating this industry, this landscape from a different perspective, as this is the first time leading the show. And, I'm kind of a realized adult, which I feel really fortunate and that I have the luxury of this happening right now in my life. But then when you think of athletes, I mean, these are very, very young men and women who come into so much wealth and popularity at a very young age, very formative periods of their life, where a lot of us, I mean, a huge majority of people, we're all still figuring it out. We're going to college. We're just, we're just finding out how we want to build the groundwork for the rest of our lives. And I can only imagine what it would be like to step into so much wealth and pressure at such a young age. I mean, Aaron Hernandez was one of the youngest people ever drafted into the league, to one of the most popular sports teams of all time. Like, what that could do. And I'm sure there's multiple stories, of varying degrees of complexity as well for a lot of athletes too. I can imagine it'd be quite intense.
Wow. Josh, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. I love where your heart is. I love your acting. I just want to be able to dive deeper into your source of energy.
Thanks, man. Well, invite me anytime you want. I'd love to.
You bet. Be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Yeah, thank you.
Now, you might be asking, why is it that I even do a show like this? And the reason why is because I'm doing this for the students of broadcasting. And when they first get into class, they have no idea what editing is all about. So I thought, well, dude, you screw up a lot in life. Why don't you just go ahead and give them some stuff where they can learn how to edit properly? Coming up next, we're going to be spending some time talking about voting and the importance of it being an everyday conversation.
You're latched through. You can say hello.
Hello and good morning.
Hey, greetings.
How are you guys doing today?
Excellent. Good morning.
Excellent. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm very excited to share a conversation with you because, wow, I have always been a big supporter of BET with their annual National Black Voter Day. And the reason being is we've got to have a voice. We've got to stop just running in the house and letting the world take care of itself.
Absolutely. That is so crucial. I'm glad you said that. And the purpose of this is to educate, inform, and motivate Black people to exercise our power and participate in this fall's election. It's just that simple.
I'm not blind to the headlines today, and I'm sure you've seen the same headlines. There's a lot of people that are trying to change things so that the Black vote is not heard, and that can't happen. And you guys stepping forward like you are today is a way of saying, do not listen to what you're seeing in those headlines.
Do not be duped. Do not be bamboozled. Do not be tricked. But remember, there's been an effort now for more than 10 years to suppress Black vote. What do I mean?
Yep.
To change state laws to make it more difficult for people to vote by imposing ID requirements, by eliminating early voting, by curtailing mail voting, by requiring that if you vote by mail, it needs to be witnessed and notarized, by eliminating souls to the polls Sunday early voting in some states. This massive movement is designed to shrink the electorate.
Yep.
It's targeted at Black people, Latinos, Indigenous Americans, young Americans. Some states have said, oh no, you need an ID, but a student ID is not enough, but a gun ID or gun permit is sufficient. So they've even gone in and selected the type of IDs that people can or cannot use. This effort, we've got to say no, 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 and we've got to be determined. This is why part of our message is everyone needs a voting plan. Where do you vote? Think ahead about who you will vote for. Educate yourself on all of the choices you have to make. It is not just about the presidency, although the presidency is paramount. In many states, counties, and cities, people will, yes, elect members of Congress, members of the United States Senate, members of county commissions, city councils, school boards, state legislatures, in some places, mayors, city council members, judges, constables. What are we doing when we vote? We're picking the people who will exercise power, who will vote on how our tax dollars are spent, vote on the laws that we're going to be required to live under. Voting is an exercise in choice of who will exercise power. That's why we got to be educated, super, super educated to know if I'm voting in Ohio, I'm voting in North Carolina, I'm voting in Virginia, I'm voting in Maryland, I'm voting in Pennsylvania. In my county, who is going to be on the ballot.
Right.
So when we walk in there, I know in advance if I'm going to vote in person, who I'm going to vote for. If I am going to vote by mail, I've thought it through. If I'm going to early vote, I have a plan to vote, and I've thought through. One of the challenges we have with Black voters is people going into the ballot box, and there may be 15 things to vote on, and they may vote on only 10, because they may say, well, I'm not aware of this constitutional amendment, this local proposition. I've not heard of these judicial candidates. I'm not sure who I want to vote for. We have to have a voting plan, because we have to intelligently maximize our exercise of our power. And Black Voter Day is, yes, be registered, yes, vote, but be an educated, smart, prepared voter to use the power. The power in a democracy is to select the people that exercise power over us, that write the rules that we have to live by, everything from traffic laws,
yes,
to the rules by which insurance operates, to how schools are funded, how streets are fixed and bridges are repaired, what the rules are for policing and criminal justice and public safety. That's what elected officials do. In a democracy, if we exercise our power, we pick the people who make those decisions. In a monarchy, in an oligarchy, in a dictatorship, we don't pick them.
That's right.
They pick themselves, and then they just hand it off to their family members, and they exercise supreme power. In this election, democracy is on the ballot. There are those running now that want to curtail, eliminate, cut back on democracy. Much is at stake. Black voters in this country, there are 34 million African Americans that are eligible to vote, not registered to vote. Our goal is to make sure that every eligible Black voter is registered, and every eligible Black voter who is registered turns out to vote. Imagine 34 million. Now, in the election of 2020 for president, 81 million votes is what Joe Biden got.
Yep.
Imagine the power. Now, Latinx voters, Latino voters, I should say, represent 36 million eligible voters. If you took and maximized Black and brown voters together, 36 and 34 equals 70. Just imagine the power that can be exercised with the Black and brown communities, with the Black community, if every eligible African American, every eligible Latino was registered to vote. I want to give people an opportunity that we have to maximize our impact and our influence, and then educate ourselves on which candidate is best aligned with how I feel and how I think.
Yep.
They may not be 100% aligned, but who's best aligned? And what candidate has plans that would injure, damage, suppress, marginalize, and oppress my community? That's the choice. And so for Black Voter Day, we want to inspire people to be well-informed, well-educated, to make the choice and to exercise our power. And I think it's important to understand, what is that power? That power is to choose who is president, to choose who is a U.S. senator, to choose who's a member of Congress, the mayor, the governor, the state legislator, in some cases, the clerk of court, the sheriff, the constable, in 40 states, the judges.
Yep. I love where your heart is. This is not enough time with you. There's got to be a website that we can go to find out more about everything that you're doing, and this has got to reach well beyond September 20th. This should be an everyday conversation.
ReclaimYourVote.org is the National Urban League's website. At the BET website, there's information on Black Voter Day. Go to those two places. Follow at Nat Urban League, at Mark Morial across all social media, and be a part of the continuing conversation about exercising our right and our power.
Please be brilliant today, sir.
Thank you, and be strong.
Oh my God, I loved being in that conversation. We even go deeper coming up next. Deep as in like the Electoral College. Oh, I'm a total buffoon on this one. Trust me. I don't know how I got hooked on this. I didn't realize that I was making the mistake until after the conversation when my wife looked at me and said, "What kind of a college are you talking about?" And I said, "The Electoral College." And she goes, "That's not what you said during that whole entire conversation." Which is every bit the reason why we do this My Day of Play, to show you how much of a screw up I can be. For some stinking reason, I said electoral. Is it a Montana thing? But then again, I was the guy that used to get in trouble when I would say nuclear. It's nuclear. But you know, maybe it's a Montana thing. I don't know. But it's Electoral College, not electoral. And I hope you don't cringe too much.
Or as I like to call him, my shaman in radio.
What's going on, Michael? How are you doing?
I am well. I give to you the good doctor.
Good morning, doctor. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm well. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I think your book title says it all. Distorting Democracy, The Forgotten History of the Electoral College and Why It Matters Today. Because I think people have shoved this to the side thinking, I don't know. But now that they've got this book, they can say, I know a lot more.
Well, that was what I was trying to do, was to set it out as plainly as I could, because it can be technical. The topic is technical.
Yeah.
But I wanted to write something that ordinary people could easily understand, and also to sort of bring to life the people who created this thing and who have massaged it to their benefit over the centuries.
Well, the number one thing here that really caught my attention, and I because this is the way that I was taught as a martial artist, learn the history before you learn the next break. And that is that you put focus on the history of what this is all about and how it did begin.
Well, you're talking my language. History is everything about who we are, why we have what we have, why we are where we are. And so absolutely, we really can't understand this system if we don't understand how we got it.
Don't you think that's because in school, I don't remember anybody in the government class breaking down the Electoral College like you do. And the thing is that, I mean, they talk about the presidency, they talk about local government, but they don't talk about the Electoral College.
Well, what they do very often, I think Americans do this, and I'm not really suggesting that there's a deep flaw here, but just take it for granted. When something is 237 years old, as our Constitution was as of yesterday, that was the anniversary of the signing. You take those institutions as almost as if they're timeless, but they're not. They come into being at a discrete historical moment as a product of certain circumstances. And when we understand that, we also can free ourselves from misconceptions and from systems that aren't really serving us very well, in fact, are harming us.
One of the things that I keep bumping into, especially with the younger voters, and I got to figure out the language to speak to them. They've got to vote because they're saying, well, the Electoral College is going to decide anyway, so why should I go stand in line? And I say, you've got to understand the system of this country.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what I would say is they're both right and wrong.
Wow.
And they're both right and wrong, because let's think about it. It always takes the same number of electors to win the Electoral College, 270 or more.
Yep.
That does not change. It doesn't change if 300 million people vote. It doesn't change if only 50 people vote. If one person votes in every state, that state still gets the same number of electors. And of course, that's one problem with it, is that it doesn't reward candidates who can increase turnout in certain states.
Yeah.
So it's got perverse incentives actually built into it.
How is the Electoral College changing and evolving in this day and age where a lot more New Yorkers are coming to the South, a lot more Californians are coming to the South? This whole area down here is becoming a melting pot of every state because they don't want to be in their own home states anymore.
Well, that's right. I mean, and of course, the United States has always been a place where we've migrated and moved around a lot. But so whether a state is red or blue, first of all, that's just a false description of any state. States are not red and blue. And I wish we would quit talking about it that way, because what that does is to just forget that there is a healthy political minority in every state. And these minorities can be quite sizable. So, for example, we're used to thinking of California as blue.
Yeah.
But in fact, 6 million Californians voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But they got no representation in the Electoral College. That's 6 million Americans who showed up with no political power at the ballot box. Now, they cast their vote, but they couldn't help their candidate. And by contrast, and again, this is not about rewarding a specific candidate, but I'm just trying to illustrate the distortions of the Electoral College. By contrast, in 5 small states, 1.7 million Biden voters got 17 Electoral College votes. So think about this: 6 million Californians with no representation, 1.7 million people from small states that get 17 electors. And another way of thinking about that is that any Californian who votes, if their candidate wins that state, they influence 20% of the electoral vote.
Wow. See, this is the reason why your book is so important, because you do break it down to a better understanding and how we can learn to activate what it is that we need to do on a local level as well as a national level.
Yes. Well, we need. So I want to then say what you said about, you encourage people to go vote, and I will just say, I vote every time, and I've never voted for the winning candidate in my state. But I vote. I have 3 adult children. You better believe I'm on the phone. Are you registered? Voting is really, really important. The habit of voting is really, really important. As a woman, I appreciate that my grandmother couldn't vote until she was well into her adulthood. And so it's just an important habit for an American to be engaged in. And it helps you be invested in your own future. But I think we need to do it with the awareness that there is a real problem and that we are showing up at the ballot box profoundly unequal right now.
Yep. Would you say the founding fathers were as wise as history says they were?
Oh, I love that question. So, I don't want to, I would say the founding fathers were a varied group of human beings. And who are we talking about here? Well, with the framing of the Constitution, we're talking about 55 men. So, if you have 55 people who show up, they're going to be of a range of wisdom and abilities, and they don't all come with the same level of preparation, and they don't all come with the same ideas, even though we talk about them as if they, have exactly the same thoughts, but they disagreed about a lot. I'll just say for some color, you have people who, some of those men slept with everything that didn't move. Yeah. Some of them, there were alcoholics. There were people, some of them died in debtor's prison. 2 of them died in duels. So, they're just very, very human in the same ways that we are today. But when they created the Electoral College, they were not trying to fulfill some important political ideal or some Enlightenment principle, some notion, some important revolutionary principle. They were simply trying to find a way to get a wise person in office. And they didn't believe that ordinary people had adequate information. Now, that's different from thinking ordinary people are fools. They don't think ordinary people are fools. In fact, there are a number of the framers of the Constitution who give quite stirring speeches about how we can trust people to make the right choice. Yeah. But there simply weren't enough of them to carry the day at that moment. But I want listeners to think about an America in 1787 that was largely rural, where communications was in an embryonic stage. There were probably about 100 newspapers, and they were mostly regional in their focus. And so you had very few people who had truly national reputations. Most Americans knew George Washington. They probably knew Ben Franklin, but beyond that, they don't know who James Madison is.
Right.
You might have known him if you were a Virginian, but maybe then only if you lived in that part of Virginia. So, when George Mason says the people are no better than a blind man choosing colors, when he says that, what he means is they just don't have the information, not that they're stupid. And, so that was the real misgiving there about popular election. But a lot of times people who talk about the origins of the Electoral College, they leave out, that James Madison says twice that he thought the people were the best choice, that Gouverneur Morris, who wrote the language, the finished draft of the Constitution, over and over tries to persuade the convention to just put it to a popular vote. So it's more complicated in its origins than people think, but it's also just not a highly principled device, and I think we need to quit talking about it as if it is.
Do you ever wonder what our grandparents and those before them how they would have handled when it comes to George Bush and Al Gore, and then up to 2016 with President Trump as well as Clinton, and then now look at where we are today? I mean, I always wonder what the ancestors would say about what we've gone through in 24 years.
Yes. So you cut out for just a little bit. Would you just repeat that question again? What specifically are you referring to? Are you talking about the state of our politics?
Well, yeah, I think I don't think our ancestors could handle what we're going through. That's basically what the thing is. I think that we're going through something that they could not have done.
Well, so you might be right. I want to say that where we are now is, it's very troubling, and I'm going to say I'm worried. But I want to also point out that the framers were also very, very worried. You should, if I had time to take people through some of these conversations, they were worried that the country was going to fragment into three republics. There was an intense political strife. And then even after the Constitution was implemented and went into effect, the next 10, 15, 20 years were periods of deep, deep partisanship where it was really, really very, very ugly. And then we've had these kinds of moments before. Of course, we did have a civil war, but we've also enjoyed times of less polarization as well. We're just in a uniquely bad one right now because I think there is a level of hateful discourse that's been normalized, and we're also there's a lot of public lying that people are not really questioning. And, one of the things I wanted to do in writing this book was to sort of demonstrate what sound history is all about, because there are people out there who are not even telling the truth about our history when they talk about the Electoral College, not relying on sources, and really kind of pulling things out of thin air, putting words in the framer's mouth. And I think that's equally as dangerous and also a crime against history.
Mm-hmm. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when you wrote these words inside that computer. And to this moment, it sends chills. Danger lurks in American presidential elections. My God, I stopped reading and had to really put myself in a position of thought when I read that.
Well, yes. And so, that's another way that we ignore the problems with the Electoral College, because it is an incentive for fraud. Now think about this. When you have 155 million votes nationwide, that's how many people voted in 2020. If you were going off a strict popular vote, it's very hard to commit fraud at the level that would alter that. It's impossible. But if you only need to change a few electors in a few states, or even one state, which absolutely you can do, you can change the entire election by shifting the election in one single state, and even sometimes in a single district. That is an incentive for fraud. And 2020 was not the first time that we've had similar fraud with respect to elector slates. So, one that we could look at is 1876. And, I would argue that we have a few elections that we don't know for sure who was the rightful winner.
Right.
So we've got an incentive to fraud built into our system.
Wow. One of the things that you put a lot of focus on, and I'm so proud of you for doing this, you literally say that you were going to dig up things beyond quotes, that this wasn't going to be just a book of quotes, that you were going to really, give us something that we could hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, so there are people out there, that put quotes by the founding fathers up on Twitter. Well, they say things that contradict themselves. And one quote is not the full story of their thought. And if I can give a great example, there's one historian who's always talking about how Alexander Hamilton called the Electoral College excellent. Well, yes, he did. But, one of the reasons that he praised it when it was created, he said that the electors can't be tampered with, so their vote can't be influenced. But Alexander Hamilton himself, within a year of writing those words, is tampering with electors. And he became the country's first election meddler. And he meddled in every presidential election until Aaron Burr shot him in 1804. And so, it's not like I'm not trying to paint him as uniquely bad. I think he's, like any human being, an amalgam of good and bad. But he was a politician, and he wanted to maximize the political benefit for his party and for his candidates. And so, if you just quote Alexander Hamilton thought the Electoral College was excellent, well, that's just not the full story.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, you do have a quote here that really kind of blew me away, and I didn't even know it existed until I got my hands on your book. Thomas Jefferson, "The earth always belongs to the living generation." What?
I love that because, Jefferson is saying, and actually, again, that's a beautiful quote that comes out of a letter with that readers should read the whole passage. It's from an 1816 letter to Samuel Kercheval in Virginia. And, what he says there is that the Constitution is not sacred like the Ark of the Covenant. It's a human creation. And that we should not have that view that it's beyond amendment. And that each generation, another part of that, should not weakly believe that they are not as capable as their forebears as choosing the form of the best way to govern themselves. And so, I think that the sum total, he's coming to us. I trust you. I trust you, the inheritors of this system.
So what did you personally learn from doing this project? And it's not something that it's coming to an end, because your nose has got to be in books and in studying at all times.
Yes. I mean, I love what I do. And as I tell my students, my job is to hang out with people from the past, and, what a privilege. What did I learn? Gosh, so much. I think, so I've been a historian for 25, 30 years. And, I think, I've always had an appreciation of sort of understand that we can't take people out of the context of their time, and that people are human beings that we can't pronounce as all good or as all bad. And I think that just that was really kind of driven home to me in a new way. I think I've always admired James Madison.
Yeah.
But I also, there's a moment in here where he does something to help the fortunes of his own political party that, I think it was borderline, borderline unethical. And I don't think he even at that moment believed in what he was doing. So I would just say that each of us is capable of a wide range of behaviors. And we need political systems that bring out the best in us, because, the ugly is kind of there in all of us. And we don't want systems that encourage that. And, so I think that's kind of, to take a moral lesson. But then I think the other lesson is that truth is always real complicated. And people want simple, they want tweets. They want 144 characters. And if you can You can boil it down to 144 characters. It's probably not true.
You've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you, Aro. Am I saying your name right?
You
Aro?
said it right. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Whew, 2 back-to-back conversations that dealt with voting. My God, we need to lighten things up a bit, right? Well, coming up next, we're going to be with Ann Patchett and Fancy Nancy illustrator Robin Preiss Glasser. You're going to love this conversation.
Hi, Arrow.
Hello, Arrow.
How are you guys doing today?
I'm good. Arrow, you've got that radio energy going on. I love that.
Well, it's only because of this
I
book,
listen
The Verts.
to iHeartRadio.
Well, thank you for listening to that. You guys have come up with a book that has touched me in the way that Mike Mulligan's Steam Shovel did when I was a kid. This is what a picture book is all about.
That's so kind. Wow. I love Mike Mulligan. That's super.
Well, the way that you bring it together, especially with, because I come from a pretty big family, and I can relate with every character in this book, especially Esty, who's an outgoing person. I want my brother to have a party. But then again, I was the one that would hide.
Oh, you were the one who would hide?
Always, always. I would just go to my bedroom. I'm fine. I'm good. You guys do your thing. I'm okay.
So how did you grow up to be an extrovert then?
I think that's because I learned how to become an actor. Because, away from this microphone, who am I?
That makes sense. I guess, I think a lot of great actors are actually introverts.
And that's why this book is so lovable. And it puts such a happy smile on your face because you're speaking about something that is actually taking place in our homes, and you're dealing with it. You're creating a solution for it.
Well, I'm thrilled. I guess the solution is to realize that there is no solution because there is no problem. Right. It's okay to be an introvert. It's okay to read a book under the couch. And it's okay to be an extrovert who wants to bring everybody over and throw some tinfoil stars up in the air.
I can totally see some great merchandise coming out of this in the way of a T-shirt that says, "Which vert are you?"
Robin, get on that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you say that, Arrow, because I was very much an introvert when I was a child, and I was a professional ballet dancer up till I was 30 before I became an illustrator. And it was also being on stage that helped me come out of myself. So young kids, I think that's really good to be forced to do some public speaking and that sort of things. Even the kids who find it really hard, it does help bring you out.
One of the best scenes inside the book that really got me was the way that the mother knew that Ivan didn't want to have the party. I'm so glad that you put something like that in this book because it was obvious that he didn't want to do it, but we needed someone to say it for us. So as readers, we would go, yes, I'm not the only one who thinks that Ivan doesn't want to do this.
Well, and it's very subtle, but mostly seen through Robin's brilliant illustrations that the father is also an extrovert. He's playing music and dancing and doing the conga line in the living room with all the guests. And the mother is in the kitchen washing dishes with Ivan. Mm-hmm. There has never been a party in which I was not the person going to the kitchen, washing the dishes. My sister is the same way. And we will argue at Thanksgiving. No, I'll clear the table. No, I'll wash all the dishes because we want to be in the kitchen by ourselves doing the work. And then we wind up doing it together.
And interesting, both of us married our opposite. Ann's husband, when you go to a restaurant with Carl, he's like the mayor of the city. You walk in and everybody, it's like cheers. Carl, everybody gets to go around and shake hands with everyone. And Anne sort of slinks behind him with something over her head, like a blanket over her head. Oh dear, do I have to talk to every table again, Carl?
I would love to watch little ones as well as parents read this book in the way, especially when Esty brings over the Blanche family, because there's going to be those that are going, oh God, here they come. Here comes that group. And there's going to be some going, yeah, more people for the party. You really do capture everybody's emotions on that.
Yes. And I first got the idea for all of this because of my stepdaughter, Josephine, who is somebody who will decide in the morning that she's going to have a giant dinner party, go to the grocery store to get food, meet total strangers at the grocery store, invite them to come to the party and say, bring all of your family and your friends. And they do. And she's overjoyed. And I'm always thinking, is there going to be enough food? How are you going to do this? Where's everybody going to sit? It always works. And everyone has the most amazing time.
What did you do differently this time around when illustrating the book?
Well, what happened is Anne and I had done 2 books together and they both took place on a farm because Anne grew up on a farm. Well, I grew up in New York City, and I'm a city girl. And so she said, when we were ready to do our 3rd book together, what would you like to draw? And I said, can we get off the farm? Can we get into the city? Can I draw people? And so thanks a lot, Anne. She wrote me a book with 19 people, and then she still had to throw in some animals. There's 7 animals. At the end of the party, in this little tiny apartment, Esty has thrown for her brother this massive party. And he's, of course, hiding behind the couch. And that's okay with Esty. She learns that that's really what he wants, and she wants to have a party, and he feels that that's okay too.
I can't be the only one that looks at these pages and thinks that all of these colors, all these facial expressions, it's a journey all to itself. And then you go in and you read the story.
When I look at those pages, I feel like I could spend an hour or more looking at any page in this book, because there are so many little stories going on as the people are relating to one another that Robin did. It's brilliant, and it's so much work. It's so much harder to illustrate a book than it is to write one.
Well, like Anne says, as she writes, the sisters walk into the party, and then I have to figure out the whole storyline behind the sisters. It's really when I make a book, it's like I'm doing an entire movie. I have to do the casting and the costume design and figure out who all the backstories of all the people are and what's their feeling and as each scene happens. So it's that's my challenge and the fun that I have entertaining myself for 8 months while I draw these books. And it takes Anne, about an hour to, if they say, well, edit it, we wanted a whole different, not in the apartment, not in a house. At one point they said it was going to be in a house in France. Well, let's have it in an apartment in, somewhere in the world, ambiguous. And so she fixed that in about 3 seconds. But of course I had to redraw the whole book because it was in a whole different setting.
I've been a wedding DJ for 32 years, and this book kind of reminds me of mom taking over the daughter's wedding.
That makes me want to interview you.
And it's one of there's so many different things that we can all relate with. In fact, I think that there's a business learning lesson here too for companies to go in saying, okay, which one of the verts are you? Let's grow with this. You can just be you, but we need you to be a stronger you by doing this. Let's tap into your creative energy and understand you. I mean, there's so many different lessons in life throughout this book.
I had already, even though the book only pubbed yesterday, I already had a few friends who contacted me and said, this book isn't for kids. This is for adults, because they were relating to this whole concept and maybe even understanding themselves a little bit more now as adults, rather, the concept's a little big for children, but kids totally get it because both of us already talk to kids and they completely get it. But one of the things in talking to kids I discovered the other day is that I'm more of an ambivert, which is half and half. For instance, Anne started the concept of this book came to her during the COVID period, because she was, as an introvert, thrilled to be stuck in the house for 2 years. And a lot of people, were suffering. I liked it, but I missed being with people way before Anne did. So I'm sort of a mixture.
Yeah. There's such a great moment there with Grandma always wanting to take that picture, and Ivan reminded me so much of my grandson Carlos, because all he did was put his foot in the picture, and my grandson Carlos would do the same thing. There, I'm in the photo.
I gotta say, Grandma Bunny is like Robin's great creation. She is so brilliant.
It's every Jewish person, grandmother and aunt in my family who's constantly judging everybody a little bit too much and whispering in the background, why can't they be different? And then I just love that the mom and dad just say, we love them the way they are. And the kids at the end come to an understanding with each other that, you know, just because they're different and have different opinions, it's okay. and they appreciate each other for how they each react to different circumstances.
Where can people go to find out more about what you guys have done as a creative team?
Well, you could go to a bookstore.
Nice. I like that.
Like Anne's bookstore.
Yeah, I own an independent bookstore in Nashville called Parnassus Books. And anytime you can go to your local independent bookstore and ask for books by Ann Patchett and Robin Preiss Glasser. And this is what will happen. If you look for books just by Ann Patchett, then you're going to find novels, because I'm mostly a novelist who writes for adults. And if you look up Robin Preiss Glasser, you're going to find Fancy Nancy. That's going to be the first thing you're going to find, which is this huge juggernaut of a children's book series. It's kind of changed the whole landscape of children's literature. But then if you search both of our names, you'll find 3 books. The first one was Landslide, which is about voting on the farm. The second one is A Scapegoat, which is about blaming farm animals for things you did yourself. And the third one is The Verts.
Wow. Well, please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you so much. What a joy you are.
Well, you be brilliant today,
and I
okay?
will keep listening to you.
Oh, please do. Please do, man. It's a new age of communication and connection with listeners. You know, it gives you that opportunity to feel like that, you know, you're part of something.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we go from a kid's book or a family book into an adult book that deals with an audacious woman. I had a fun time with Corinne Cavanaugh. Hello and good morning to everybody. How's everybody doing?
Well, this is Corinne.
How are you doing, Corinne?
I'm good.
I'll tell you what. I want to know, because I when I write, I like to write very descriptive. And in reading your paragraphs, Corinne, I'm going, oh my God, I have met somebody who can paint a room just like I'd love to.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I couldn't agree more. I really tried on those descriptions. I was really trying to do some world building for the readers.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, I want to be able to smell the room, and you know, and words are the only thing that's going to make that happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to be able to see it, smell it, touch it, picture yourself there.
Absolutely. As that writer, when you're sitting there and you're typing it all out, how does a scene come together for you? Because that to me is when you start building those, you know, those sets and stuff like that inside your mind, that's where the perfectionist kind of steps in.
Absolutely. I think it through and I'm building the scenes in just short form first. So I do just a sentence or two, and then I sit down and flush it out top to bottom. I'm there. What do I see? What do I smell? Like you said, you know, what am I doing with my hands? So that's how it all comes together.
So you basically act it out before it becomes a paragraph?
Yeah, in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, see, I love that kind of writing.
Thanks.
The book we're talking about is An Audacious Woman. This is going to be the first of 3 books. I mean, you're opening up our imaginations, aren't you?
I hope so. And I think the setting is so compelling in this particular series of books. It's a $70 million Gilded Age mansion in Manhattan, but it's modern day. So it's one of the few that have survived over time. And I hope that people's imagination comes alive in this mansion. It's really important to as a part of the setting.
Well, it activated my wife's imagination. She said, oh my God, it sounds so scary.
There are secrets there. You can't, with a place from 1900, you can't help but have secrets. In fact, there's a fun cat character that leads you into mischief.
So now when you say the mystery and things, I mean, I've heard rumors that there are some Easter eggs throughout this story. Should we be looking for them, or does it just come into play on its own?
Oh, it comes into play on its own. In fact, you kind of see those Easter eggs out in the second and third book.
Okay.
And like the cat brings you into one area, and one of the contestants who are fighting for this mansion, they discover something really haunting about Eleanor's past. Eleanor's the main character. She's this audacious, spicy woman who wants nothing more than to get out and travel the world. And so she's giving away this mansion for free. She's just trying to choose the right person.
And it's not just Eleanor, it's Eleanor Beaufort. I like the way that those two names come together.
Yes, Eleanor Beaufort. It's a very traditional name, which is what I was trying to get across. But, when she was growing up, it was a hard time to be a breakout woman, and she did it anyway. So it's really a lot of fun to watch her and how she behaves and how she influences and kind of mentors the other contestants.
And one of the things that you face, and this is the reality of the real world, is the way that Eleanor wants to get on with life. I mean, she's ready to go explore and to have some fun. There's many families today that are doing the same thing. My wife and I would love to do that, but we're so attached to our home and forest that our RV trip is the only thing that we can do. But what Eleanor does, she's going to give it away to a contestant and not a family member.
And absolutely. Her family members, the ones that are still surviving, have burned all their bridges with her because she's tried to be this independent, cheeky woman, and she's being her full self. And so she thought, you know what, I want to give this away to someone who's actually going to take care of it, right? So you are, you traveling in your RV and stuff. If you had someone who would really take on your legacy and make it into something incredible, well, then that might be a person you'd like to give your hope to,
See, I can relate with that because in 1997, we planted 1,700 trees in this forest that we live in. And it's one of those things where, I want to sell this so they can chop down these beautiful living creatures?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand what you mean. I've got a good friend of mine, Carolyn Rousseau, who she founded Peace Trees Vietnam, and they planted trees in the old minefields in Vietnam, and her legacy is also super important. Wow, well, that's great work that you've been doing there, even just for our environment locally.
Well, yeah, and it really does help, and that's what I want. The goal, really, in all honesty, is that one day I'm going to win the lottery or something, and I'm going to turn it into a writer's paradise where writers can come and just have a place where they, like Walden's Pond. I would love to have that.
Yes, I love that idea with the serenity in the trees. I can see it now.
Now, where was your writing space? Because, we all have our own little areas where we love to write. Where did you get your energy in? Do you go into the same zone?
I do. I make myself write every single day. That's a common thing. You hear it, but it really helps. And I sit down at my desk, and I did make my space in my office pretty serene to do that, right? Nice lighting. It's just the right vibe. I've got a couple inspirational pieces. I've got a little pin that says "She persisted" up there. And, just things that make me feel good and kind of get my mind in that positivity flow.
Inviting listeners to become a part of your conversation inside this book. You talk about feminism, activism, racism, and so much more. You bring the real world into that story.
I do, because a story, a fiction novel especially, is a safe space for people. Mm-hmm. And so I bring forward controversial topics that are discussed between these contestants who are very different, so that people can see what it looks like to have cordial conversations about dicey topics. And like I said, it's a safe space to do that. They're fiction characters who've got no skin in the game. But it is fascinating to see them bring up these things that normally you wouldn't bring up in polite society.
Is it a cool thing to be an audacious woman? Because, you share 5 tips.
Absolutely. It's cool. Wear what you want. I can't tell you how much time I've spent just trying to dress for the meeting or dressing for other people. Wear what you want. If you're going to be on TV, okay, put some thought into it. But, other than that, next, I think people should listen to advice, consider it, but feel free not to take it.
Yeah.
Sometimes your own intuition is the best thing to listen to.
And
then don't feel, yeah.
I was going to say, I can so relate with that because I always tell people that my career began 36 years after my radio station first job. You know, it's like once I got out of radio, then that was it. Then it was time for me to do my career.
Exactly. And you knew that and you felt that in your soul. And then don't feel like you have to follow traditions. You know, go ahead and buck convention, buck society, do things like maybe just a little unusual, but they really, really work for you. I don't know if you've got any parents out there listening of smaller kids, but I like to eat before my kids come home so that I'm a better parent.
Yeah.
You know, you got all this advice telling, oh, you have to eat the meals together at a table. No, I'm a much better parent when I feed myself first. So you think about that. You think about that in the airplane, right? Put your mask on first. Well, there's plenty of examples of that. And a lot of times those examples are bucking convention or society.
See, that's the reason why I like to cook in the kitchen, because I like to sample that food before anybody else gets anywhere near it.
Absolutely. And you know it's delicious and your blood sugar is all evened out. You don't get a case of the hangries for other people.
How did you develop the characters in the way that, I mean, because I like to, I'll get pictures of people and I'll draw the characters around that. How did you get the images and then build it?
Interesting you asked that. So I got I knew what Eleanor looked like in my mind. She actually came to me in a dream. And that's why I thought, oh gosh, I got to write this book. I was still working in tech at the time. And I thought, well, she's so remarkable. I can't wait. So I knew what she was like and I knew what she looked like. For the other characters, I did some research and I was intentional to make them look different. So they're in different ages, different genders, different income profiles. So it was really an intentional play to make them very diverse in that way.
Let's talk about those contestants, since you drew them out just like that, because one of the biggest questions that you've got is, are these contestants safe, and is Eleanor sane? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Are they safe is a big question, right? They're competing and they stay in this house for 30 days. And so they're out of their normal atmosphere. They're in Eleanor's world. And you have to wonder, is she pulling something tricky? And at one point, she does go through some passages, old servant passages, and she looks through people and, they're being spied on.
Yeah.
And then you've got just the contestants competing with each other, doing sort of tricky things behind each other's back. So it really keeps you following along in this fast-paced way.
Do you want to have this turn into a reality game show, or would you rather have a 10-part series on Hulu?
Oh my gosh, Hulu for sure. I would be so honored. In fact, you focus on writing with your work, and I'm doing my pitch right now for a book to screen. So we'll see if it ends up on Hulu or any other network or TV or the movies. You never know.
Now, the listeners are going to learn as they dig deeper into your stories that you come from the world of tech. And we know that the world of tech right now has a best friend or an enemy, and it's called AI. Are you using any of that as a tool?
Let's get into this. This is the biggest question out there. And writers, as you know, are just really upset about it because nobody wants to be replaced by a bot, right? But yes, I use AI, but I use it in a very particular way, just for research. So one of the greatest things about AI is, especially historical fiction, you can look up what really happened in our history and have it return your answer in just an instant.
Yeah.
That could take you hours at the library or at the screen. And so that's the way to use a tool. Another way to use the tool is agents and submissions. You're thinking, what do you mean by that? Well, I could do a query that says, tell me 10 agents for historical fiction that are accepting submissions right now. Return to me the results, and it will give you names and websites for those people.
Wow. See, nobody ever talks about the positive side of AI. It's always the evil, dark side.
Well, yeah, you're right. There are some things I don't think you should use AI for. The writing itself is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to using AI for writing to plagiarize by accident because that's how AI works, right? It's a database training model, whether it's using the training data available on the internet or available in books. It's already been written before, and it's taking concepts that exist and putting them together for you. And that's how the writing works. So I really do not recommend using that because you could be unintentionally plagiarizing. Same thing for cover art. It's just not quite there yet. People can tell it's odd. You've got 6 fingers on one hand, and it's just not high quality. Artists exist because they're creative, and they're really good at being creative within the realm of possibility that makes humans feel like it's relatable.
Yeah, because it goes back all the way to Mark Twain making the comment that he says authors should use their own accent as writers. And I'm so afraid that AI is going to take away that accent because we all write from the regions that we live within. We have the street slang, or we'll go out and we'll do the research on how we're forming words or what a thought is. And AI can't do that.
Absolutely. And it's your tone of voice. And it's the reason we all fall in love with certain authors, right? You like reading their cadence, their prose, they've got the personal background to inform their writing. And in this book, Eleanor's a cheeky so-and-so, and I want to be Eleanor when I grow up. I'm writing as if this woman exists, and it's who I want to be, and her tone of voice is what makes it so compelling to read. So you have to keep that. Mark Twain's right.
I got to give you kudos on one thing, and that is I love the fact that you did a book video. In other words, you did a trailer, and not too many authors are doing that.
They're not, and I think more should, especially if you've spent the time to do your world building and your descriptions of the setting and the rooms and stuff like that. You can give people a little taste. And, people are so visual these days. Like you said, Hulu and every other, people are streaming lots and lots of content. So video is king right now, and the movies know it, right? Every time you go to a movie, you've got the 20 minutes of previews before you see the movie. Why not a book? And books are doing this. Typically, it's big publishing agencies, but I think self-published authors should give it a shot too. There's a lot of software out there that they could use.
Absolutely. Where can people go to find out more about you and give you some love?
Audaciousbook.com, or please follow me on Instagram. It's Corinne Cava is my handle. So CORINNECAVA.
I love it. Please come back to the show anytime in the future. You've got 2 more books to follow, so I expect to talk to you in the future.
I would love that. Thanks so much.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
You too.
Thank you.